Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. It's December 23rd, so for Seinfeld fans, it's happy Festivus for the rest of us. I spoke with Jerry Seinfeld when he came to the Kennedy Center in 2017 for a night of laughter and song to promote transcendental meditation, also known as TM. Listen closely, you'll hear him interrupted by pop star Kesha in a red carpet moment that went so viral that it inspired a mural in Melbourne, Australia.
You know, the analogy that I use that people seem to understand is TM is like, imagine you have a phone and then someone gives you a charger. And a TM is a charger. Like anytime you want to charge up your phone, you just plug it in. Because it's hard to just sleep when you're tired. Because people are tired most of the time.
Gosh, I love you so much.
Oh, thanks.
Can I give you a hug?
No, thanks.
Please?
No, thanks.
A little one.
Yeah, no, thanks.
Oh.
That was a nice moment.
I don't know who that was.
Yeah, it was Kesha.
Okay. Well, I wish you the best.
You can look it up after.
Anyway, that's it.
Mr. Seinfeld. It's great.
Hi, how are you?
Nice to meet you.
How you doing?
So, you've been doing TM for, I think you said, like 40-some years? You would even do it lunch
72,
breaks during...
45 years.
Was it lunch breaks during Seinfeld? I heard you say once?
Yes, that's right.
Wow. How much did that sort of benefit you during the show to clear your mind? And are the results similar to Serenity now, or is it a little better?
It's better than Serenity now. It's similar, though. It's similar because you want Serenity now. And you can do TM anytime you want. You just sit down, you close your eyes, and you find some Serenity, and there's no effort.
If you are here tonight, Jerry Seinfeld, what is Bizarro Jerry doing tonight?
I guess he would be not here because he's always doing the opposite of what Jerry does.
Exactly. And, I mean, just the legacy of the show, what do we have to do to get you a Mark Twain Prize here, man? I mean, you should have already got it.
I don't know what I have to achieve in comedy to get that prize. Maybe you could talk to them. I'm not that big on awards and stuff like that.
Right.
I just feel like audience is laughing. That's my favorite award.
So if you had a choice between giving up the voice or giving up the award, you'd probably go, hello, and give up the award.
That's right, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I spoke with Jerry again in 2018 at the Kennedy Center's Mark Twain Prize for American Humor.
Hello. La la la. Hey,
that's a
never
great
heard that before.
Never.
I want to know about the big get out shove. Are your shoulders still a little bruised?
Yeah, those were great. I don't know how that started, but it was so funny the way she would do it. I think she just did it one time, and we just thought it was so funny. And I'm not even sure how many we did. We did a lot of them. I would love that when she would push me and I would disappear out of frame.
So good.
So funny.
They all went to
I
jail.
don't think they were bad morally. I think we're all somewhat selfish in life.
Yeah.
That's part of what we like about the comedy is we relate to that little selfish streak that we all have.
Yeah. Well, in the contest episode, you remember that it was John F. Kennedy Jr., and now we're at the Kennedy Center here, coming full circle.
That?
So which contest is harder to win, that one or the Mark Twain Prize?
The Mark Twain Prize is harder.
Well, elaborate.
You have to have a career of success to get this prize.
Yeah, and you were talking about the dance earlier. What does it start in the thumbs and sort of emanate down the body?
Yeah. The first thing she did was that exact dance.
And who came up with Sweet Fancy Moses? Full body dry heave set to music.
I think it was Sweet Fancy Moses was Jeff Schaefer, and Full Body Dry Heave Set to Music was mine.
Awesome.
It's magic. Magic happens and or doesn't happen. The trick is to know it when you see it. You can't make it, but when you see it, you gotta go, that's it, stop there. You know, really great comedic performers love the mechanics of it. They want to get into, well, how does this bit work? Is it better if I turn like that? Is it funnier like that? Should I use this hand? You know, everything has to kind of be figured out. I feel that way about all the cast members. We're all like, we were in love with each other, the four of us, honestly. Absolutely head over heels in love with each other. We each thought the other three was fantastic. And that's a really nice way to work. And that's another reason I ended the show when I did. I never wanted to have anything else happen. So, you know, we have had this amazing 9 years together. It's like a party. I don't like to be the last one to leave the party. You know, I like to, okay, we had a good time. Let's not twist the sponge too hard. Yeah.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
I also spoke with Steve Hytner, who played Jerry's frenemy, Kenny Bania, to mark the 20th anniversary of Seinfeld's finale.
Thank you so much for joining us, Steve.
I'm good. How are you doing, Jason?
I am good. Where are we talking to you at? Where are you these days?
I am actually up in the Reno Tahoe area.
Ah, okay.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful up here.
Say hi to say hi to Fredo
I got a
for
little
me.
boy. Say hi to who?
Fredo.
Yes, I'm sure. If I see him, first thing I'll do.
Would you say you got a little boy?
I got a little boy, and we're raising him up here. So I did 25 years in L.A. That's a full serving.
Yeah, I don't think you need to. Well, it depends if it's is a full serving. Is that a meal or not? I don't know. We're still debating that. But
Depends if there's crackers.
yeah, absolutely. Oh, exactly. Depends if there's crackers. We can get more into that later. But I want to explain to our listeners the reason we decided to set this up was because Monday marks, hard to believe, the 20th anniversary of the Seinfeld finale. It was in May 14th, 1998. Hard to believe it's been 20 years. Do you? I remember at the time, some people loved the episode, some people didn't. I thought it was a genius way, the trial to bring back all the characters. But do you think the show got out? Got out at the right time. I mean, 9 years. I think the Beatles went 9. I think Jerry once said something about going into the double digits just felt like too long. So he said 9 was perfect. I mean, what do you think? I think you guys were at the peak of the show when you got out ahead while we still missed you.
Yeah, I think it was Jerry. Jerry always said the show treated him so well that he wanted to treat the show well, and that he wanted it to go out on top. And I feel like it did. And the final show, which I liked. Some people that had some backlash to it. It was really basically more of a reunion show than anything else.
Yeah.
And I kind of like that aspect of it.
Yeah, and you came back, right? You come back to testify against them, and
yeah.
you're sitting in the
yeah.
Yeah,
I was out in the courtroom and stuff, and it was just an unbelievable experience. I mean, when we shot that show, that final episode, there were helicopters hovering above, just trying to get any kind of idea of what the episode was going to be about. But, often the final, even not only in the final finale, but each season, the final episode always got a lot of scrutiny. But I don't think that's what Seinfeld, the show, did best. They did shows about small little things better, So
right.
Whenever there was like a concept show, I don't know if that was necessarily the strength of Seinfeld. I always argued that the final episode could have been them going out to the movies and Jerry can't find his keys and they can't leave. And, it's just some small idea like that is kind of what the genius of Seinfeld was.
Right. Well, I thought it was a genius way to, like you said, a reunion show to get them all testify and make us all be like, huh, yeah, you're right. These four they were pretty bad people. They should be in jail.
They were horrible. and absolutely horrible people.
Yeah, and I think it ended with the same line that started the show, right? Jerry talking about George's button placement on his shirt. So I thought that was pretty genius.
Yeah, I actually agree. I thought the whole thing was really smart and clever. I don't think there was going to be any sort of episode that people were going to adore.
Right, because everyone had everyone had written in their own minds, oh, this is how I want to see it end, and so whatever you guys put out there, But I think time has been kind to it. I think it's a pretty good way to wrap it up. And honestly, I think the best part was all sort of the clip montages and stuff that went along with it. I think it was the first time we ever heard that Green Day song, "Time of Your Life." Like it was a cultural moment.
That's so funny you mentioned that because that Green Day song was brand new. It wasn't even a hit yet.
You made it a hit.
Yeah. And, well, it was a great song, but Seinfeld put that in there. And I remember the night of the final taping before it, a month or so or 2 months before it aired, there was obviously a huge party and they put a montage together for all of us that we were all watching and they put that song underneath it. And I remember all of us going, what is that song? That song's awesome.
It was a tearjerker because you see the empty apartments and everything, Jerry's apartment. Man, that one, yeah, that'll make you tear up if you were a fan of the show. Absolutely. All right, well, let's go into some of your personal memories. We've talked the finale a while here, but just talk about Kenny Bania. I mean, we've all had friends like that either they can't take a hint, they sort of overrate the friendship, or in your case, they mooch off of the jokes as sort of a hack with Jerry. But is that how you approached it? Did you have a Kenny Bania in your own life?
Well, the way it happened was when I auditioned for the role, all it said was the most annoying guy in the world. So when you go into these auditions and you're waiting to go in, you can hear the other people auditioning. The walls are pretty thin. So if the character is raising their voice at all, you can hear them.
Right.
And I was kind of hearing people audition, not trying to, but you can't help it. And they were just very negative. So really on the last second on a dime, I decided, what if he's just wants the meal and all this stuff because he's desperate to be Jerry's friend and he just adores Jerry. Now you think, well, yeah, that's the character, but that really wasn't the character initially. And then everybody was going, hey, you owe me. And then I decided to go in and go, I adore you and let's hang out even more. And then Larry and Jerry were in the room, and they just fell out when I just made it this upbeat guy who adored Jerry. And then from then on in, great writers pick up on that, and they go, oh, this is the guy. And so then it just turned into a whole other thing. So between my interpretation of it and then them starting to write it that way, that's how the character took off.
That's great. Now, do you, I bet you, do you still get people coming up doing the whole, like, why do they call it Oval Team? The mug's round, the jar's round, they should call it Round Team. That's gold, Jerry. Like, I guarantee you still get that wherever you go.
Only if I go out of the house. It's just something that is, that's why I choose to embrace it, because otherwise there's no option. I mean, it's going to happen anyway. Someone's going to scream, did you ever get your suit back? Someone's going to scream, soup's not a meal. Gold, Jerry, gold. I mean, the character had so many catchphrases. It was crazy.
Hey, you're a part of TV history. I would totally run with that. Are you kidding me? But do you remember first reading that? I mean, it's probably hard to even remember now. Do you remember flipping through that script and seeing that line, that's gold, Jerry? Do you remember that moment and how you deciding how you're going to deliver it there? Because the delivery is what makes that line.
Well, it's interesting because early the character Bania always had these catchphrases, and the beginning of Bania, which was 4 years earlier, it was the best, Jerry, the best. Everything was that.
Right.
And I would repeat things like that. Now, that gold was actually, I think, my last episode before the finale. That was like 4 years later.
Wow. And
actually, we had gotten off that's the best, Jerry, the best. But when we did that episode, the line was actually, that's gold, Jerry. And then I said, well, let's go back to the best thing. I said, let's make it that's gold, Jerry, gold. Let's tag it like we used to do with the best. And Jerry goes, oh, yeah, absolutely.
So it was your idea. In the script, it was just that's gold, Jerry, and it was your idea to tag it with the second gold.
I decided, I said, let's tag it with the second gold like we always used to do the best, Jerry, the best, because that was a cadence that kind of Bania had. So then it was 4. You don't realize 4 years have gone by since that first introduction of Bania, and then it just seemed to me as like, well, let's tag it with gold. Let's see how it sounds with that gold, Jerry, gold. And then once I did it, the crew just fell apart, and you know how it is. If you're making the crew laugh, everything's good.
I love that insight. That's great. I never knew that. And then what was the restaurant? It was Mendy's, right? Did you after all these years have you decided that is soup a meal?
You know what? Things went south. When we did the final episode, we were getting all kinds of offers of where we were going to watch the final episode. And so I got a really great offer, first class travel to New York, do a small show. They're going to pay me a lot of money, and then I'd watch the show there. And Mendy's called my agent, and they said, we'd like Steve to come watch the final episode here. So my agent's like, well, all right. Well, this is what's on the table. And he goes, what are you offering? They go, we'd like to offer him dinner.
Well,
so my agent's
that?
like, my agent's like, I don't know if that's really going to cut it. And from what I understand, Mendy's has been very upset with me for years because they felt they made me and I wasn't loyal.
Oh, well, they'll have to just deal that. You put them on the map. But I thought it was pretty genius that when it came time back around to do the Soup Nazi episode, maybe the most famous one ever, that they brought you back to kind of recall back to that. And you're like, hey, Jerry, I didn't know you liked soup. And you try to cut in line.
Yeah. Well, Jerry loved the character of Bania. So he used to jam me. I think I aired on like 7 or 8 episodes, but I shot probably 12 or 15. Because Jerry loved the character. See, he would just say, hey, let's just add Bania to this. Let's see what happens. So the Soup Nazi one is a perfect example of where he said, hey, let's have Bania cut in line.
It's so great.
So for me, it was just Jerry loved the character. And, back then there were no cell phones. And every time I would get cut out, because they would always shoot more than they needed, every single time I get cut out, he'd call me at home personally and go, oh, we had to cut it because we didn't have time. I'd be like, Jerry, just keep thinking about me. It's not a problem.
And that got you back on, what was it, the Butter Shave episode where you I think you end up dating his girlfriend. But
exactly.
didn't Jerry dump her because she used his toothbrush after he dropped it in the toilet? So wait,
I gotta tell you, you're Seinfeld, sir.
Oh, I think it's the greatest show of all time. I'm sure you would agree. But
now let me ask you a question, because there's different levels of fans. Like, I know the show because I was on it.
Sure.
But I mean, there are people that know everything. If I just said to you, name the 2 horses, would you know what horses I'm talking about?
Snoopy and Prickly Pete.
They are.
It took a second. I had to defrag the files up in my brain for a second, but I got it. I was trying to think which episode. You know what I mean? Because my mind first went to Rusty. With the Rusty, we can't breathe back here. And then I was like, oh yeah, the other. Oh,
That's awesome. You nailed it.
Okay, cool. Well, I guess just sort of in closing, you've been great with your time. 20 years later, you've had some time to let it all sink in, and I'm sure your thoughts on certain episodes and stuff has evolved over the years. In hindsight, looking back, is there one episode, even one that you weren't in, that still breaks you up the most?
That's a good question. There's two that come to my mind. One is the contest, where to see who can hold out longest without being the master of their own domain, and then the other one was just Michael Richards as Kramer with the Merv Griffin set was just unbelievable.
Hey, come on down! And they're like, "Where's the camera?"
He was just brilliant in that. So I think those two are probably my favorite. But the most amazing thing about that show is years later what a classic it is, how iconic it is. And you think, well, did you know that then? And the crazy thing about being on Seinfeld was you did know it then. Mm-hmm. You did know you were on something it was like being on I Love Lucy and knowing it was going to be I Love Lucy.
Do you think it's the greatest show of all time, or at least comedy, sitcom? I think so.
Yeah, for me, I think so too. And for me, the same way with LeBron and Jordan. If you're in the conversation, you're in the conversation.
Well, it's the greatest show of all time. And I feel like there's a whole nother generation that maybe missed it. And I'm like, come on, you got to go binge this thing. It's ubiquitous. It's everywhere. People quote it and they don't even realize they do at some point.
Well, I tell you, I headline stand-up all over the country, and you'd be amazed at the youth of the people that come up to me that adore the show.
Oh, I think it's timeless. I think it'll be around forever. It's great. And so to be a part of it, that just must feel extra special 20 years later, sir.
Very lucky. I'm very lucky.
All right, Steve. You've been generous with your time. Thank you so much. And thanks for giving us Kenny Bania. We'll love him forever.
My pleasure. Great chatting.
All right. That was gold.
Finally, I spoke with John O'Hurley, who played J. Peterman when he performed in Chicago at DC's National Theater in 2015.
John, thanks for joining us on WTOP.
No, good to be here. Thanks for asking.
Take me back. When did you first experience Chicago? Did you see on Broadway when you were younger?
I saw the play back in the late 70s, back when it was in its original concept. Much more vaudevillian, very slapstick. All the music was there, but they didn't quite, and it came out the same year that of Chorus Line did on Broadway. So it kind of lived
75?
Yes, and kind of lived in the shadow of Chorus Line in terms of the Tonys, so it never really got the recognition. And it was a musical ahead of its time, darkly comedic and about the jazz era. At the same time that Broadway was looking for a lot of the dancers, and that's why Chorus Line did so well. Resurrected in 1995, and since then it has run every day ever since, and it's the longest-running American musical to date, celebrating 18 years right now, and no end in sight. We have it on tour every year. I take it around to 10 or 12 cities, and we're halfway through our run right now, and we're having the best time at the National Theater.
Awesome. Yeah, I was actually, speaking of the National Theater, I was there last night for the sold-out show. It was fantastic. Great job.
Thank you.
You play the lawyer character, Billy Flynn, who, if our listeners remember the movie, that was the Richard Gere part. Mm-hmm. How did you become a part of this show?
Right after Dancing with the Stars, the first season that I was on there, right after that ended, I had an opportunity to do kind of pick and choose from a lot of different things, and I thought about going to Broadway because I had always heard about Chicago, and everyone said, that's the role you should be doing, that it was kind of made for you. Well, I'd never seen it, so it didn't really... I mean, I'd seen it, early, but the original concoction of the role didn't really appeal to me. I went to see the revival there on Broadway, and I said, that's the role I want to do. He's an eloquent, dangerous, now, the way they've changed the concept of the character, he's elegant, he's dangerous, he's eloquent, and just one of the great leading men roles that has been written on Broadway. So very appealing to me. So 2005, met with Barry Weissler, who runs the show, owns the show, and I sat down for drinks with him, and I said I want to do the role. And sure enough, 2 months later, I'm opening on Broadway in Chicago.
That's fantastic. In terms of the show, just speaking to some of my favorite bits from last night, I loved how you interacted with the orchestra. There's a scene where you grab the conductor's wand and
I have a lot of I have a lot of little things that I throw into the show. They give me a little bit of leeway to fill in some moments with my own.
That's what I was going to ask. Is that like stuff that you came up with on your?
Well, yep. I came. Every time I have certain things that I throw in. Back in 2009, when Blagojevich was the huge problem, and he had just sold the Senate. He had just sold the rights to Obama's seat in Chicago. There was a line in the show when I said, if Jesus Christ had 5,000, if Jesus Christ lived in Chicago, and if he had $5,000. Well, he'd have himself a Senate seat, I'll tell you that. Well, it stopped the show, and it got all sorts of press. And
yeah, well, you still have that line kind of in the show, but no more Blagojevich.
No more
You've
Blagojevich,
morphed it a little bit. Another part I loved is the ventriloquist number. You have Roxy Hart sitting on
my lap, acting as my dummy, and I do the entire press interview, kind of mouthing the words that my answers to the press. So it's a brilliantly scribed number. I think one of the most innovative numbers ever done in Broadway history. I think it's just so fantastic that they came up with the concept, not only the melody, the great arrangement of that song, and then on top of that, Fosse doing the choreography to that number is just out of this world. But I think it's one of the most innovative numbers ever done in theater.
Talk about playing in front of a Washington audience, a cultured audience, and especially at the National Theater. How special is that?
Well, the National Theater is truly just acoustically one of the best in the country, with a hands down. It's an alive house. The audience is literally 4 feet from you when you're on that stage, and it still has 1,800 people, so it's a large house, but it's intimate. And so that sets up for that feeling of doing a play in the basement for your parents, and it has that kind of intimacy to it. So that helps a lot for a show like this. And I love bringing it to Washington because Washington has such smart people. It's smart because this show is so full of so much comedic nuance that it takes smart audiences to get it, to really, really enjoy the show. And as you could tell from being in the show last night, or being in the audience last night, this audience really gets it.
People were howling.
Howling, yeah.
I don't want to give anything away, but there's a bit with one of the jurors that people. Did I catch you break up a little bit?
Yeah, I
thought so.
I pierced the veil last night a little bit. Yeah,
that's okay every now and then. It's like watching an SNL skit. When they lose it, sometimes it's even funnier.
There are moments when it deserves. When you spent that much time with an audience and they're engaged in the humor of the moment too. It's okay to break it.
Were you ever tempted to break it back during the Seinfeld days, working with such comedic people?
There are moments when I'm in the middle of my, those endless Peterman monologues that would go on and on. If you watch the corner of my mouth, it wants to go up. And I can see there are 2 or 3 episodes that I can still see it. The little corner of my mouth is still twitching there.
Our corners were going up too. Do you remember which moments those were? Which scenes?
There was the when Elaine, take it from me, it's going to be rough in there. But cue to you, better bring a poncho.
One of my all-time favorite Peterman moments was the backwards episode when you do your Apocalypse Now, your Brando, the horror.
The horror. Yeah, that was a wonderful parody, and they did the lighting and everything else the same way. My favorite moment in that show is when Elaine finally arrives on the scene because I'm the only poet warrior that she could find in the neighborhood, and I turn to the 15-year-old boy that's sitting at the entrance to the cave, and I look at him and I say, Mugala, Mugala, Majapa. And he gets up and he walks out, and she turns to me and she says, Mr. Peterman, you speak Burmese? And I said, oh, for heaven's sakes, no, Elaine. That was gibberish.
Yeah, you believed everything except for throwing the bananas at Dennis Hopper. You had had it down. You probably knew the lines better than Brando did when he showed up.
Well, historically, Brando used to write the lines down. He never memorized a line. If you look in all of his films, everything was written somewhere because that's what he was doing. He's always looking off camera because he's reading his lines.
Really? Mm-hmm. Interesting. You probably ask Seinfeld stuff all the time. What behind-the-scenes stuff do we... because we all have our favorite moments of on-screen Peterman, but behind the scenes as people working with, give us a little insight into what that was like.
Well, they were the 4 smartest actors I've ever worked with. Mm-hmm. And that is the essence of good comedy, because you can't be a good comic actor unless you're a really smart person, because you have to understand what irony is, and not a lot of people do. There are people that can, and the beauty of the comedic actors on Seinfeld is that they were willing to throw themselves under a bus. Mm-hmm. In order to make something funny. Yeah. Julia is a great example of that. She's willing to make herself seem so infinitely unattractive to get the laugh. Hence the dance, the pushing, no matter what it was, somebody being sponge-worthy. She's willing to go to places where other actresses would, it's like, that's not my style. But she would go down with the ship to make something funny.
What makes it still, it's still super relevant. You hear people in the newsroom quoting it every day. More than any other show.
Well, because it was about language. It was about taking a subject and dicing it apart down to the most minuscule moments, and then finding a few more. And then if you took 3 of those particular topics and then you made them cross at one point in the show, so that all 3 subplots always crossed, then you have this, this recipe for brilliance. Now, it was about writing. If you think about it, there was no action in the show. Sure. Any movement in the show really was Kramer's,
making the bus stops or whatever.
But his skid stops that he would do in the middle of Jerry's or the entrance into Jerry's apartment. But it was all about language. Yeah. You could basically, everybody stood around and talked, which brings me to the point of saying that I don't know that the show would have been as funny today in the cell phone area.
That's
because
true.
I think everybody has their heads down now. Mm-hmm. There's certain things that are on texting and what have you that are funny too. But Seinfeld was funny because people looked each other in the eye and they talked. And conversations were more important back then.
You couldn't go to Monk's Diner with people on their cell phones.
No.
And totally the Kramer movie phone bit would not have worked because people would be online. No, why don't you tell me the name of the movie?
Yeah, or exactly the Merv Griffin talk show episode. Yes, yeah, it wouldn't have existed.
Certain things are of that time, but there was also ahead of its time. We're not gay, not that there's anything wrong with it, or Festivus with religion, or the Native American episodes. That's a conversation we're still having in D.C. with the Kramer episode with scalping tickets. It was way ahead of its time on a lot of social issues too, and I think that keeps it relevant.
And actually, there's one episode that I don't know that they can show anymore. It's pulled
Which
that out
episode
of
was that?
Oh gosh, one of the last few episodes. The Puerto Rican Day episode.
Oh yeah, that's the one with the ribbons, or the ribbons. Just final question. So from moving on from that, you're obviously aware of its legacy. It just celebrated big anniversary last year and had a bunch of screened on TBS and all that, but. Moving on from Seinfeld, you've done Dancing with the Stars, Family Feud, now Back to Chicago, and all the other stuff you work on. How do you juggle appreciating the legacy but also not being defined by it? How do you reinvent yourself? Because you've continually done it successfully.
Well, I just do a lot of different things. But, for the most part, I kind of live by my imagination. Whatever my imagination tells me to do. That little pictures in my imagination are what I follow. I've written 3 bestsellers on dogs. I host the National Dog Show, and that came really because the phone rang one day 13 years ago from the head of NBC Sports and said, "Woof woof," and I said, "Okay, I'm there." I don't try to scribe a career. Sure. I basically look over my shoulder and say, "Well, there it is. It's behind me."
Let it come to you.
So it does. It's amazing how opportunity speaks, and I've always let it speak. But I also don't deny the concept of imagination, and I let that. If the idea to write a book comes to me, I'll sit down and I'll write a book. I compose, and I've got several albums that are out and have all done really well on Billboard, and it's because I'll sit down and I'll go, okay, I'm going to spend 6 months doing this album. I kind of let my imagination be my guide, so it's the reason I have an eclectic career at best.
That's great. Any hints for our listeners on what's next, or are we just focused on Chicago at the moment?
No, I'm going to continue with till the end of the tour on Seinfeld, or excuse me, on Chicago. Yes, here I go. Until the end of March, and then Bryan Cranston and I have a new series together that we're in the middle of preparing. It's very unusual, so I can't talk about it. It's never been done before.
It's a TV series?
It's a TV series, and Bryan's producing it, and I'm starring in it. And it will be, if we get it all up and running, the funniest thing I've ever done on television.
Without giving away any plot, because I definitely don't want to do that. I want it to be a surprise. How did you just come across Cranston to
Bryan
hash this out?
Bryan and I've been best friends since 1983.
Oh, he was on the show.
He was. Well, we were not only that. We were best friends since '83. We were on a show called Loving together, a soap opera back in on ABC back in the early '80s, and he's been my best man at 2 weddings, and I fired him at that point because I said, obviously it was you, not me. And
I didn't know he was your best man.
Best man twice, actually. Yeah, no, we've been best friends forever, and we own property together and vacation together, and we've been very close friends.
So Peterman and Watley were hanging out all
essentially
set.
The same person.
Well, that's great. Hey, thanks so much for coming in.
Great to be with you.
Appreciate it. Thanks so much for joining us on Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Remember to hit the subscribe button and give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time. I wanted to take a second to tell you about an app I really enjoy. Living in the DC area is great, and Podcast DC gathers all of the local shows that I like all in one local app. Health, sports, local news, politics, and so much more. Podcast DC is the new local app with hundreds of DC area podcasts to choose from. I can earn exciting rewards just for listening and share the podcasts I love instantly. Available in the App Store or in Google Play, listen local with Podcast DC.